Hey folks, I'm Chris and I'm your Commander Mechanic. When Ivy Gleeful Spellthief was revealed in Dominaria United, I was smitten. She's like Orvar and Calamax had a weird baby, and that is 100% up my alley. She copies things in Commander, and that's like my favorite thing to do in the world. In this case, Ivy copies spells that target another creature. Let's take a look. Ivy is a 2-mana, 2/1 fairy rogue with flying that reads, whenever a player casts a spell that targets a single creature other than Ivy Gleeful Spellthief, you may copy that spell. The copy targets Ivy. And an important part of reminder text, a copy of an aura spell, or any permanent spell, becomes a token. That last part is very important, because it can lead to getting a ton of permanents on the battlefield. Copies of enchantments is just the start of it. Triggering enters the battlefield enchantress effects from Citizen Champion or Eidolon of Blossoms each time you cast an aura spell. But there is another important interaction here in Mutate. If you cast a Mutate creature, that's a spell that's cast with a target, meaning you get a token copy of the mutated creature that you can put over or under Ivy. With Mutate, putting a creature under a targeted creature gives it just the mutated creature's abilities. For instance, a Migratory Greathorn under an Ivy just gives Ivy the whenever this creature mutates, fetch a basic land into play tapped ability. But if you mutate over a creature, that creature now has the mutated creature's name, power, toughness, and the abilities of both creatures, or all creatures in the stack. So a Migratory Greathorn mutated over an Ivy gives you a 3/4 flyer named Migratory Greathorn that fetches a basic land when it mutates and copies those spells. For Commander, the important thing to note is that wherever the original Ivy is in a stack of mutated creatures makes that amalgamation your commander. Meaning, regardless of its name, it deals commander damage. So an Archipelagor over top of an Ivy can get real angry real fast. That in mind, the original Bestow mechanic, as seen on Boon Satyr, also works well with Ivy. This can be cast on a creature you control to give it +4/+2 with a token copy targeting Ivy too. But with Bestow, when the creature Boon Satyr is on would leave the battlefield, both the Boon Satyr original copy and token copy stay in play as creatures. This is a good board wipe protection that can leave you with 8 power on the battlefield when everyone else has nothing. Now, if we're copying spells, you know I'm going to try and copy them as many times as possible, so let's look at a few options for that. Starting with many copies of Ivy. We need non-legendary copies, but even one extra non-legendary Ivy means we're copying spells again. I love Irenicus's Vile Duplication here. It targets a creature other than Ivy to make a non-legendary copy, but then the copy makes a non-legendary copy of Ivy. It's perfect for the deck, hands down one of the best cards. Classic Spark Double is another way to get non-legendary copies too. I love my clones, and I don't think I'd be able to leave him out of this conversation. And the new Vesuvan Duplimancy can make non-legendary copies of Ivy too, as long as we target her with the cast spell. That doesn't get us all of the value we could from copying her ability, but more Ivy is more better. We can't leave out Orvar from the mix too. While they don't make non-legendary Ivy copies, they will make copies of everything we target with original spells, and if we get a non-legendary Ivy, we can really go nuts with it. From there, let's talk about copying our spells. Ivy grants us a copy, but a Twinning Staff ends up getting us a bonus copy, and for 7 mana, potentially another bonus copy. That's a bonus aura entering the battlefield for our enchantress effects, or extra copies of cantrips to refill our hands. Errant Street Artist is another way to copy our copies. For 2 mana, we get a copy of a spell on the stack that we didn't cast. In this case, any of the copies Ivy would make. These two are BFFs, and I think I saw them getting mimosas for brunch last week. And hey, if you've made it this far into the video, let me know in the comments below. Tell me who you think Ivy's best friend actually is, just so I know you're still paying attention. Drop a like too, so I know you want more deck text like this in the future. One wild thing we can do with all of these copies is to use them to fuel us. Use them to draw us wild. Archmage Emeritus will draw us a card when we cast or copy an instant or sorcery. So casting a Charge Through and getting 3 copies of it, well, that's going to draw us a card for the original cast, a card for each copy, then a card because Charge Through draws us a card. So that's going to be something like 8 cards off of a 1-mana spell if we get more copies of it. That can get pretty wild. Which is why I've kept the mana value of most of the spells in this list very, very low. There are 26 1-mana spells in the deck, meaning the majority of what you're drawing or casting you will be able to play. That eliminates the need for most ramp options since playing on curve is going to be simple, as long as you get Ivy online even once. In fact, I'm sure you could build a version of this list where every non-creature spell in the deck is 1 mana value. Even most of the creatures. There are that many options for spells and auras you could be playing. Now with that being said, you might be asking, Chris, how are we winning? What are we doing apart from copying spells and drawing cards? Come on, do you need more than that? I'm kidding, of course you need a game plan. Largely we'll be looking at combat damage centric strategies, hoping to beat in with a bulky Ivy. But Curve Topper Nylea's Colossus is going to be doing us massive favors here. The Constellation ability triggers when an enchantment enters the battlefield, token or not. So getting a few copies of some 1-mana auras can result in near exponential growth for Ivy. Ivy Smash! One cool piece of tech in the list is Jaheira, Friend of the Forest. This new legend from Battle for Baldur's Gate allows us to tap a token for green mana. Any token. This means you can tap your aura tokens. That's right, tap your auras to make mana. The deck might not feature a lot of ramp, but the ramp it does is very, very on brand. When playing the deck, it's important to be cautious of when you're running Ivy out. She's going to be a high priority target for removal, so make sure you have another creature in play to target with spells before Ivy comes out, and enough mana to cast 1 or 2 of your cheap spells when she does hit the battlefield. Holding a Blossoming Defense or Tamiyo's Safekeeping to protect her from an initial barrage of removal would be wise. Lastly, let's talk the upgrade. Naturally, when you're making token copies of things, token doublers are fair game. In this case, we get classics Parallel Lives and Doubling Season, but we also get Adrix and Nev too. That's 3 more ways to copy our copies. They are pricey, so keep that in mind. Otherwise, the deck comes together pretty reasonably. My version, linked below, is under $200 and can be trimmed from there too. You can check out the full list by visiting my sponsor, Moxfield. Moxfield is the best deck building platform in the world, and the easiest way to build lists between powerful search functions and bulk editing options. I certainly wouldn't be able to build the 2 to 3 decks I do each week without them. Be sure to follow my Moxfield profile while you're there. And be sure to watch these other videos from me too. It really helps the channel out. As always, folks, good luck and have fun.